Hello, and welcome to the second episode of Nodecast. It's a big world out there. Today we'll be covering what all is there to Minetest, and I'm your host, EXE Virus. For all of you that listened to the first episode, thank you. It was great having Ben Robb on there. Obviously, I have a lot of work cut out for me to become a great host, and I am very thankful for all of you that are listening the second time. And for all of those that subscribed on YouTube, thank you. For all of those that listen through pCloud, great. I hope to be on more platforms soon enough. I'm still trying to find a great audio host that will let me put this all on Spotify, Pandora, so on and so forth. As for today's episode, I want to cover what this podcast is and what this podcast will try to be going forward, just to clarify a few things. So some of you have been asking about release schedules. This podcast is supposed to release every first and third Friday of the month. So the next episode, if everything goes to plan, will be releasing 1 week from today on Friday, the 7th of January. Typically, I try to upload at 00 UTC. If you don't know what UTC is, just look it up online, figure out how that correlates to your time zone if you want to get them right when they release. The episodes that you've listened to so far are interviews, right? So the first one was an interview with Ben Robb. Those will be the bread and butter of this podcast. I expect to do those every first Friday of the month. The third Friday, the second episode of each month, will typically be a different kind of episode, and that will be subject to change based on demand, how I'm doing, how you all are liking these episodes. So sadly, for all of you stuck with me today, you only have me today. The second episode each month will be focusing on Minetest in general, rather than a specific interviewer's experiences. So I hope to, over the next couple months, take you through an introduction to Minetest, what it's like to be a player, where all the community is, maybe some first steps into modding or the engine. There's a lot of things to cover about the sphere of Minetest. I'm hoping to be somewhat educational in these second episodes, just like the first ones. Okay, since this is the second episode, today we'll be introducing, as I said before, what all is there to Minetest. First will be all the different places online that you can experience Minetest. You'd be surprised at just how many places this community has gotten themselves into. And then I'll try to cover some of the different faces, names, and people you'll come across so that you at least recognize them and can kind of understand what their role is in this community. The subjects I'll be covering are Minetest.net, that is the official Minetest website, the dev wiki, the player wiki, the forums, the content database, the server list, GitHub, GitLab, Android app, you get it. There's a lot here. So we'll just go right into it. So Minetest.net. This is the official Minetest website, hosted by Celeron55, the original creator of Minetest. He hosts several things underneath the Minetest.net domain, but mostly Minetest.net is a welcome page. It's a download button for the Windows users, but it's good for kind of getting a glance at this community. Their Get Involved page is really good at getting you links to a lot of different places around Minetest. I see they've been doing some updates. It's still not always up to date, because Celeron55 is a busy person. I will also add in that the gallery is sorely out of date and we need some new pictures, guys. If anyone can bug Celeron55 to update those, it'd be great. The next ones are the wikis. These are running on technology called MediaWiki. This is what Wikipedia runs off of. There's a dev wiki and a player wiki. The dev wiki is dev.minetest.net, and the player wiki, so this is for like players that are playing the game, is wiki.minetest.net. These two websites are out of date. Sometimes the last time someone written on a page was like 7 years ago. But there are some gems in there. It's not horribly inaccurate. It was a good introduction into this community when I started way back when. The player wiki has some cool links to, especially I would say this for someone that's been with Minetest for a while. I would go to the wiki.minetest.net/programs and editors, and I'll have all these links in the show notes. That's basically it for the wikis. The expectation going forward for the dev wiki is actually that's probably going to be replaced since it's been woefully out of date. For all those looking for a good reference, in the Minetest repository in the docs folder, there's a thing called lua_api.txt. It's a file that you can view the entire reference of the modder API. So, moving on, Minetest also has their own forums. These are like the old traditional forums from the 2000 era. The forum is actually where some people exclusively live in the Minetest community. You will find a lot of buried gems in the forums. If you have way more time than me, I recommend going out and seeing what all there is in that forum. For those of you that found this podcast through the forum, thank you for being a lurker. Just good luck in finding it all. There's actually been some people that have created search tools specifically for the forum outside of the forum because the forum search tools are not up to par for what you need to find everything. But definitely check them out and try to bring some of those things back to life. There's a lot of good stuff in there that has kind of gone by the wayside because their creators are no longer with us at this point. All right. The Minetest content database. For anyone that's played a recent version of Minetest, as in I think 5.0 or newer, you may have noticed that there's now a content tab in your game when you start up the menu. That content tab lets you find packages, and those packages are on the content database. This is run by Ruben Wardy. He's the creator of it. The editors and package maintainers are other people now at this point, but Ruben Wardy is the host or maintainer of that entire world. It's a cool place. It's essentially our marketplace, I guess. Free, obviously, for all sorts of packages, games, mods, resource packs that you would ever find in Minetest that are probably up to date. At the very least, the content database will give you only stuff that is compatible with your version according to the author's statement that is compatible with your version of Minetest. So that is very cool that there is a official platform for us to put all of our, I guess, mods packages up. I will say for all those FOSS zealots, FOSS as in free zealots, content database is not a requirement. You can actually point your client to any content database that you want. I think I'd have to go find it. Someone else is hosting their own content database with more non-free stuff. But the goal of the official Minetest content database is to really encourage open source licensed content that is up to date and working with Minetest. And using their review system, they try to get you quality mods, games, packages. So think of that as the tip of the iceberg, the best of our iceberg, hopefully, that Minetest has to offer. I will say that for those of you that don't understand the ranking system, this is good for people that are already in this community and been trying to figure out how the heck they get their package up in the rankings. I recommend going to the help page, then looking for the words top packages algorithm, and that'll explain to you kind of how things work for there. Reviews are the most powerful part of getting your package up there, and then number of downloads, recent downloads, has another effect on it. So a game that was recently made that has a lot of reviews and is getting a lot of new downloads will likely be top on the page. For those of you that know me, I am the creator of Labyrinth and Little Lady, so you might see my games up there. Woohoo, thanks for everyone that's been playing them. All right, the server list. So the Minetest server list is where the public-facing servers, so if you want your server to be known to the general Minetest community, that is where your server will be listed. That is when you are on the multiplayer tab and you see all those servers showing up there. That list comes from servers.minetest.net. There's some cool tools that people have made that kind of ping that server list generally and keep track of the stats of the Minetest community. I think we have about 400 to 500 players consistently on our platforms, which for an open source project is amazing. It has not been growing particularly on the online world. We've been seeing more in the single player world, but it's hard to get numbers on that because single players aren't connecting to an online server. Moving on to GitHub. For all those open source FOSS zealots, Git is distributed so you can host Minetest on other Git repo sites like GitLab, GitHub. I think some people run their own Git hosting software. I think 10+1 runs their own. Nodebug is a hosting for Git. You can mirror Minetest on any Git platform that you want, but the official Minetest hosting is on GitHub. That's where all our issues are. That's where our core developers are. That is where development pushes forward. In that GitHub for the official Minetest repository, I'll have this in the show notes, you will see in that official Minetest repository, you will see 12 repositories actually. You'll see Minetest, Irelict. I gotta practice that, guys. I'm sorry. the Minetest mapper, the content database backend, the GitHub pages hosting of our documentation, Minetest game, the Android app deps, and this IOScene exporter. Essentially, you'll find everything officialized here in this GitHub repository. Feel free to put in bug reports for both Minetest, the content database. Maybe you've had an issue with the Blender plugin for B3D export or .x export. If you don't know what those are, don't worry about it. But definitely make sure before you put in an issue or a suggestion on any of these projects, please use the search bar to check to see if someone else has made an issue similar to what you're going to ask for. If they have, just put a review or a comment on it or give it a +1. Add in your 2 bits if you think it hasn't been said yet. I'm going to kind of talk about the GitLab side of things. So there's the GitHub official. There's also kind of an unofficial GitLab, but there's a really cool link you can get to from the GitLab Minetest.net. I'll have a link to this. And this is the documentation of that Lua_API.txt I talked about earlier. GitLab actually has a static page hosted. For those of you who don't know, static website is a great way to do documentation websites. And that is a searchable website for all of the Minetest modding documentation that is beautifully colored in green and white and has syntax highlighting. Is really helpful for reading that Lua API reference. Again, I'll have that link in there. If you haven't been using it, you've been missing out. It's a great resource. Some of our more hardcore devs still prefer the API.txt because it's a little bit faster to search with the Control-F find feature in your browser. Again, long story short, use them both. Okay. I also want to kind of mention the Android app in Minetest. So the Android app is bad, but it's free, and it is full-fledged Minetest. So you can play any of our mods on any of our servers, on any of our games on the Android app, but the controls are mediocre. I mean, everyone knows this. It's been worked on some. It's still supported, obviously. Hopefully, someday soon we can improve the Android app controls. But you can play on your phone, on your tablet. A lot of our online player base does. There's a lot of kids that play on their phones. So for those of you that are making mods and games, don't forget about our Android player base. They're important. Sorry, iPhone users, the Apple Store is not conducive to the LGPL license that Minetest is under yet. But at this point in time, we will not support the Apple Play Store because the Apple Store because they are unable to comply with our license terms. Okay, IRC. I think it's called Internet Relay Chat. Don't hold me to that one. Everyone's going to laugh at me. I'm a little bit younger, so I didn't grow up with IRC. This was kind of a 2000s technology. This is like chat rooms technology. But that is the most agnostic way to do Minetest, like the Minetest community. There is, I think we're hosted on Libra chat. I'll try to have a link to how to get onto the IRC chat. But there are 4 main places that you can go. There's Minetest, hashtag Minetest-dev, the hub, and -docs. Docs is new. They're trying to create a replacement for the wikis. Minetest, #Minetest itself is for more modding, general Minetest questions. Hub is for like kind of a lounge. And -dev is for your engine devs. So if you want to get into the hot and heavy C++ stuff that you're on GitHub and putting in issues and merge requests and stuff, Minetest-dev is where you'll find our current crop of core developers improving Minetest. There are other platforms. Here we go. There is Matrix. Matrix is like Discord but open source. It's mediocre, but it's more rich text than IRC. It's just a bit buggy. The current room on Matrix is just called Minetest. We have an official Discord for Minetest that's hosted by Green Zenith. It's actually my main platform I live on because it works for my phone and I'm a father and I'm busy. There's a lot of other staffers on there. There's a lot of people on the Discord. A lot of the community lives there in IRC. Those are the 2 big places. And the forums. Reddit, we have a Reddit page. It's slowly gaining some traction and use. It's mostly for questions, shout outs, plugs. Use it for basically anything related to Minetest. Even if you want to talk about like trash talk Minetest, I've seen that before. We are on Twitter and Mastodon. Mastodon's the open source Twitter. Ruben Wardy is the current manager of that Twitter. I've never used Mastodon. I think Ruben Wardy's also in charge of that one. If you want to send out a tweet, Ruben is always looking for new tweets or things to show off. So if you got a cool build or something that you want to show to the rest of the world, send Ruben Wardy a quick image and text for him to upload. YouTube channels. So yeah, we have some YouTube channels. Celeron55 technically has some original videos and channels. Don't go there. That stuff's old, but it is funny to see. I'll have to come back and give you a better list of this. Look at the show notes. YouTube channels. There's a lot of new YouTube channels. I think Star Ninjas just started up a YouTube channels. There's a lot of new stuff coming down the pipeline for YouTube, which is great. It's cool to see the community gaining some traction there. For those of you that want to host your own Minetest server, not at home, but online all the time, and you don't have to dedicate a computer to it, there's a few different routes you can go. You can go purchase your own virtual private server online, and that costs like $100 a year, $50 a year, depending on what you're getting. And you can host your own Minetest server that way, or you can go through dedicated hosters. There's two that I know of at this point. There's the edgy1.net hosting service. They host a lot of the public-facing servers in Minetest. There's a new person on the block. That is deafblindminetestgaming.com. That is DB Gamer. They will take care of a lot of the infrastructure for hosting your Minetest server. So you kind of tell them, give me these games, these mods, put me on this port, and away you go. And they'll take care of kind of the back end stuff. I recommend that for all of you that are not tech savvy and don't want to get tech savvy. Those are worthwhile services to pay for. The other places that you'll find Minetest is actually Linux operating system repositories. So some of you might be using, say, the Ubuntu or Debian or Snap to install Minetest. The devs recommend using Snap to stay up to date. If you are using your distribution's Minetest, like say you did like sudo yum install or apt-get install Minetest, you're likely running on an older version of Minetest and missing out on new features. Please either download from source and compile that way from the GitHub, or snap install on your installation. Running the latest things will get you the latest games. There are other resources outside of these official resources. One that I would love to bring up is Ruben Wardy's modding book. He is a core dev and sporadically extremely active, but his modding book is a great introduction into becoming a modder for Minetest. He will walk you through everything from what the heck is Lua to creating nodes/blocks on the world, to having a player entity that flies around, to updating the HUD or adding new biomes to your game. He's really good at getting you up to speed on how to get into Minetest, and that is a nicely laid out book. Can't recommend it enough. Other places that you'll see Minetest actually being used in the wild, I know that Lamente is using it for education in Europe. One of our other almost core dev, mostly just a big contributor, Josiah, is using it for a coding competition this winter. And then more recently, you've seen the Game Jam, the Minetest Game Jam of 2021. It's our first one. Those results are actually coming out tomorrow, January 1st. And that was initially seeded by Minetest Videos and Mr. E. They gave the seed fund. Originally, I think it was $200 fund, and this fund has grown up to $720 to the top 3 games of the jam. I think we've had 24 or 25 submissions that successfully came through. Those were all due on the 21st. I actually participated with a game called Little Lady, and I also helped on a team for Grand Theft Box, which is more of a joke. Grand Theft Box is not supposed to be a real game. For those of you that are expecting a real game, don't be surprised when it's not. Feel free to go ahead and review those games. I think reviewing for the general community is done at this point. Sorry it took me so long to get this podcast out. I was finishing up my game. But the results should be coming out tomorrow or tonight. It depends on where you are in your time zones. And I'm excited to see who won. For those of you that have been following this game jam closely, you probably can guess who's doing well right now. But it is exciting. This game jam has created a lot of new games for Minetest. They all need a lot more polish, except for maybe the top ones. But it's exciting to see all the new development going on, and I wish the core dev team and the other staffers kind of running the show here in Minetest to continue to do things like this. It's a really big help to the community. I think I've covered just about everything there is to know about Minetest. I kind of want to talk a little bit more about the people in the Minetest world. So I've mentioned some names: Ruben Wardy, Lamente, Josiah, Celeron55. Let's kind of give you an overview of what those people are. So again, Celeron55 is the original creator of Minetest. And that was, I think, in 2011 or 2012 when the first public-facing uploads were made. The game has come really far from it. I remember seeing it back in like 2013. Minetest has changed a lot. And there has been many core devs. So the way that it works is that Celeron55 made an open source version of his game, Minetest, right? That's open source. So now there are other contributors. And in fact, Celeron55 does not do most of the core dev work nowadays. Core devs are the ones that are working on the Minetest engine rather than the mods and games that you play. They're working on the stuff that actually gets those mod and games to you in the back end. And you'll hear complaints about the engine not making enough progress or whatever from the modders. That's because these people do this out of their free time. So the current people that are core devs, the ones that are working on the engine, based on GitHub, is Kalanu, Celeron55, can't pronounce this one, Naila Karant, EZHH, Nerzal, Ruben Wardy, SFan5, Shadow Ninja, Small Joker, So Far, VRob, and Wuzzy2. To know kind of some of these people, if you notice I said Ruben Wardy, that's the content database maker. SFan5 is doing most of our development at this moment. VRob is working on a replacement for all of our HUD and form specs. Someday that will join us. And at the end of the day, all of these people contribute what they can. Again, SFan5 is doing most of the development, and Celeron55 is kind of our dictator. At the end of the day, Celeron55 may push development in a direction or make calls for the community. Currently, generally donations go to Celeron55, and then he works with the core team to figure out to get where those go properly, so on and so forth. So we have a relatively healthy structure. It's not, amazing. We don't have no nonprofit organization with the Blender Foundation, all that stuff, for lots of reasons, most of them privacy related. But at the end of the day, those are the current core devs. There's been many in the past. Like, for those of you that have been around forever, there's been Real Bad Angel, Blockman, Dark Rose, Proler, XYZ, Pills Adam. There's a lot of names in this past. If you want to go see those contributors and those devs that have been with Minetest in the past, I recommend kind of looking at the commit history. For Minetest, if you don't know what that is, go to GitHub and look at history. Or go to minetest.net and go to the credits page. So that'd be like /credits. And kind of look at who's been around. You'll see some of these people pop up, leave, come back again. Minetest has a churning community, and so they come back like boomerangs sometimes. I think that's enough from me today. I don't think you need to hear any more from this podcast. Again, this is just an introduction into everything there is in this community. Minetest is everywhere. We're somewhat organized and mostly disorganized. If you want to see all of these places that I've listed, talked about, mentioned, I will have show notes up within a few days here with links to every single one of these sites that I mentioned. Check out the Game Jam results tomorrow when they release. I think it's going to be on the 1st of January. Make sure to join some of these new platforms and get involved with the community more. And be on the lookout for my next episode next week. It will not be near as awesome as with Ben Robb. I am, again, not a great interviewer. This one was done online, exclusively over email and pre-recorded chain, so it's going to be very different. But I got someone that most of the community has never heard of, and I think it's going to be fun to hear from a voice that is unique to us. Anyways, be on the lookout for next week's episode release, and thank you for joining me today. Have a great day, everyone.